thought I'd apologise. My Spanish is terrible and my Catalonian is worse. In fact, I don't know any words in Catalonian. Now, I had hoped to give you a big demo of the latest project we're working on called Favour the Journey, but sadly, the powers that be decided that may not be a good idea. I don't understand these things, but they decided that anyway. So I thought I would give a brief talk about what has inspired me and us at Lionhead and Bullford before in some of the games that I have done, and then talk very briefly about the projects we're working on today. So, over the years I've created, lots of different games. I've been in the industry for, 20 years, and I've had lots of times when I've had ideas which have been terrible and ideas which have been okay. So we're going to go through a few of those ideas. Now the first thing is inspiration. That is getting an idea. It's a very strange thing to have. Sometimes those ideas come to you when you least expect it. I remember that when I was first going out with my wife, and we were married, and we were being intimate together, and for some reason, rather than thinking about how lovely it was to be in her arms, suddenly this idea for a computer game popped into my mind. So I had to say to her, just wait a moment, just let me write this down, and I'll get back to you. I've never been allowed to do that since, because she was very insulted at the time. It rarely comes when you need it most. I can remember that I did a conference in London, and the idea of the conference was to have game ideas, and they had Will Wright on stage, and he came up with a brilliant game idea, as Will Wright does, and then there was me, and I just had no idea at all. I just had Space Invaders as the idea. So ideas are something which never comes to you when you need them most. And I find that the worst thing, the most intimidating thing of all, is a blank sheet of paper. Is when someone says to you, write your ideas down. Ideas often come at the strange time. So let's go through a few things that have inspired me to create some of the games that I've created. And the first game that we'll look at is a game called Populous. This was my first game, and it started with seeing a little piece of graphics on the screen. That was a sound effect, by the way. It's not a fault, that actually was a sound effect. It started with seeing a piece of graphics on the screen, and then thinking of how wonderful Lego was when I was a kid, and how incredible it was, the feeling that you could build anything, and more importantly, destroy anything. And it's interesting that for me, Lego is all about building and destroying. But in addition to that, the idea I can remember as a kid loving ants nests, seeing ants just crawling around their nest, and I was always intrigued by the life in an ant's nest. Of course, I always used to destroy the ant's nest. I always used to burn the ants with magnifying glass, or pour petrol on the ant's nest. Not a very nice person around. But those were some of the inspirations. As you can see, inspiration isn't always films. It's not always other computer games. I think it is from anything. So let's move on to the next one. Next game, Syndicate. I remember that back in the I kind of, it was a hot day, and there were lots of people around, and I was thinking, I just wish I had a minigun that I could just get through this. I know it's terrible. I'm probably been locked up as a person after this, but I remember that feeling of, whether I would ever do it, I don't know, but I remember that feeling of when we were doing the prototype of Syndicate. I said, why don't we let people loose with a minigun? And, although it's a very long time ago and the graphics look pretty terrible now, you can see that, you can't really see me in the crowd, but we were free to go around and shoot whoever you like. And again, that was the feeling of, it's that feeling of power, if you like. Same with Hopkins, it was a slight feeling of power. The next game I did, let's have a show of hands, who has played Magic Carpet? Bless people. See, you like miniguns, that proves it. So Magic Carpet, really, we had this demo. And I think it wasn't a game there, it was just flying over a landscape, which you'll see in a second, I'll show you a bit. Just to remind you. It's just flying over a landscape, and I thought at the time, what could this be? Now, if I had been sensible, I would have been a fighter jet, or it would have been a helicopter, or something which people would understand. But instead, it was a magic carpet. And only because, and this is the absolute truth, me and my sister, when we were children, used to have this carpet at home. And it used to be this lovely Persian carpet, which my mother had told me was worth thousands of pounds. The fact that she had got it from the shop for about 20 euros about 2 years ago was irrelevant. She said it was worth thousands of pounds, so we didn't spill it. And I can remember sitting on that carpet and pretending that it was a magic carpet. It was a wonderful feeling, and I think in my mind I was flying over the landscape and I was, it was the most enchanting experience ever. I remember that when I saw this demo of this flying around the landscape, I remembered when I was a child what it was like to imagine being, flying around the carpet. And of course, magic. I have this almost obsession with magic. The idea of the feeling of magic. Imagine being able to cast magic. And in a very real way, I think Magic Carpet had the best magic in all of the games that I did, because sometimes you could cast magic spells that would change the whole landscape. It would create earthquakes and volcanoes, and that kind of made me feel powerful. And even today, I'm still revisiting that idea of magic. So then came a game called Theme Park. Again, how many people have played Theme Park? Right, so it's better. You see, getting a bit later on in time, so people are getting a bit older, so it's good. And Theme Park was really interesting at the time, especially at the moment. There's a lot of social games around which are a lot simpler, and I don't think anyone expected us at Molyneux to do a theme park game. They expected us to do a game with miniguns or with, being involved, but not being, we're at a theme park. And there wasn't really any games around that, but I can remember vividly going along to a theme park and just being fascinated by it. Here was this world that has been created by Disneyland, Six Flags, or Universal. They create these worlds which we all go to, and we all visit, we all love, but how does it work? How do those theme parks work? How do they take what looks like the most dangerous things in the world and make them safe? said, well, why don't we do a game about theme parks? And the team weren't really very excited by this because they really wanted to do another gun game, which would have been the sensible move. So the way I sold it to them was I said, look, we're going to create a game called Theme Park where you build and design your own theme park, and you can make as tall a roller coaster as you like. The team weren't very excited. It can be so tall that when people come off, they'll be sick. The team likes it. They quite like the idea of making these crazy roller coaster rides. And so we went in, and that whole mechanic of making rides that make people sick. And in theme park, a lot of people's theme parks end up being this sea of vomit because people love the idea of making those little people suffer. And the theme park went on to be, hugely successful. And then went on again a show had some of the people play Dungeon Keeper. Dungeon Keeper is one of my favourite games, and the idea for Dungeon Keeper definitely came in a moment when I was watching a movie called You Only Live Twice. It's a James Bond movie. And in this movie, James Bond single-handedly takes out the evil villain who has built an entire base in the middle of a volcano. James Bond comes in, presses one button, and the whole base blows up. And I think this is really unfair on bad guys. I mean, this poor evil guy has spent his life building this base. And along comes James Bond in his suave dinner suit, presses one button and his life is destroyed. We never find out about the bad guy. I mean, just imagine what it's like to be a bad guy. It must be really hard work. You've got to employ the people. I mean, what is the pay going to be like? Because, you can imagine trying to employ someone, yes, come on work for me, you're probably going to die a horrible death in about 2 years' time, but the benefits are really good. So I was absolutely fascinated by this. And so, when we finished Theme Park, slightly as a reaction to Theme Park was so good, so huge, we decided to really embrace the dark side. So Dungeon Keeper was all about being evil. Just being as evil as you possibly could. This idea that you could build your own dungeon, if heroes came into the dungeon, the good guys came into the dungeon, you could kill them. And that actually in itself, I think is such a, I still love that pure idea of letting the player be something else. So that's one side. The other thing is, again, another thing from childhood, I used to love the thought of digging for treasure. I used to go down to the beach and be absolutely convinced that every spade I would dig, I would find treasure. And I used to love this thought of caves and just imagine there could be a cave you could discover the treasure. And so we have implemented Dungeon Keeper, but it was just like an RTS-based game where you had different buildings. And then